saving them all the time. But again, a simple thing is what resist will persist. They keep building and building until you finally say, I've had enough, I can't take it anymore. And I encourage people not to get to that point. That can be a great and phenomenal teacher, but it's not the only teacher. We can also learn through grace, we can learn through peace, we can learn through joy, we can learn through peace. And so I encourage us to get aware and get present when the signal starts to change, and just stop for a moment and ask, what is my body saying to me? It's like a self-investigation or something. When you ask good questions, you get good answers. And it's like seeking what you'll find. But if we're constantly trying to suppress or avoid or resist, we're missing the message. We would never go to a mechanic and say, can you cut the light to my check engine light so I don't have to see it anymore? No, he would never do that. That would be wild, because you're constantly thinking, man, you're going to blow up, my wheel's going to fall off. But yet we do that on a daily basis to our own human physiology, to something we can't yet replace. I mean, maybe we'll replicate in the next couple of years where we're going, but it's like we'll give more credence and more attention to the mechanical things than this beautiful creation of gifted. It's the most advanced technology in the world. You just got to learn the user manual. So it's really learning those signals, being present, stopping for a moment, and just listening to yourself, because who else has the answers for you?
Absolutely, I appreciate that answer. We'll go back to Benny. What does a routine look like when you feel like you're getting out of whack, when you feel like your energy is just becoming off? We talked briefly about social media last night, and how sometimes it's just like, I'm just off of it. I don't feel the need to tell anybody I'm off of it. I don't feel the need to check it. I just need that break sometimes. But that's when it gets overwhelming, kind of like Doc said. What about when it's just, I guess, a tinge of, this just doesn't feel right, I need to do something to reset myself? Yeah. What does that look like? Is that a routine for you? Is it something that you go to?
I think the most important thing is to have honest people in your life. Like if it's a pastor, if it's a mentor, if it's a coach. I think the problem is that we don't have enough honest people telling us the truth. Right? So we find people who we hang with, but nobody to hang on to. And so the difference that I believe is what's helped me in whatever season that I've gone through is I find people who I can be honest with. And if I can't be honest with them, they probably aren't good for me in that season. Maybe you can join me in another season, right? But this season, here's what I need. I remember when I was going through therapy, and I don't know if anybody here's gone through therapy. If not, you probably need therapy. No, I'm just kidding. But when I was going through therapy, they said, you need to build your team, your squad. I was like, all right, who do I need? I need a coach, I need a pastor, I need a therapist, I need a good friend who's not afraid to tell me the truth in love, right? There's a scripture in the Bible that says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, right? And so sometimes we want people to tell us what we want to hear, not what we need to hear. And so for me, I ask you, who in your life can not only call you out, but call you in, right? Who can really help you navigate through whatever season? And that's just not in life, that's in business too. I remember one time I was gonna make a bad business decision, and I ran into some folks and they said, run, don't even do that. And they saved me some headache and some time. And so I think part of it is who's your support network? You know, do you have people, like the very first, I was very intentional the way I came out to y'all, by the way. Like I wanted you to know, like, I'm not gonna hide nothing today. Because that's what we do all the time. We wanna look good, successful, we wanna look dapper, right? We wanna look fresh, we wanna look suave. And all that's good, but you know, real recognize real. We know when you're struggling. You know when I'm struggling. You can see it. Matter of fact, you can feel it through a text message. And so the reality is, do you have honest people in your life? And I think that's what I've really worked hard at, not only wanting that, but becoming that for people. That's what makes me a very successful coach. Not because I've gone through training, not because I've been doing it for 15 years. It's because I actually connect with where people are at in the moment. You can call it intuition, you can call it revelation, you can call it the Holy Spirit, you call it whatever you want. Give it whatever name you want. But the truth is that inside of us, we're longing for something deeper, more meaningful. And you gotta know when you need it and why you want it. And so I think part of it for me is, you know, going through that part of my life, that helps me out. Because I'm in a season right now, but guess what? I'm not gonna always be in this season. You're not gonna always be in a losing season. You're not gonna always be in a grieving season. You're gonna be in other seasons of your life. And guess what? Some of those people were meant for that season, but they can't go to your next season with you. You're gonna need some higher ups. You're gonna need folks. That's why I love getting in the room with other men who know more than me and who have other experience. Because now I get to get challenged. Now I get to mature and grow in areas that I didn't know. And so I think for me, that's what works.
Absolutely, thank you for that. I'm going to actually change the question, but it's still going to be along the same lines with this one, right? Because we talked about routine, we talked about how do you change your energy when you feel it's off. What about when you get to that point where it's just you're numb, right? Because I've been there, and I don't know if anybody else has been to that point in their life where it's like, I'm just going to go, do what I got to do, go home, no one cares, get it done, right?
You mean numb or autopilot?
Probably a little bit of both.
Okay.
Autopilot and numb, and not even caring that I'm on autopilot. When in reality, I do care, but it's just suppressed so far down that I'm just like, I can't even deal with that right now because I got so much other stuff going on. How do you get back to base where I would say you're just not ashamed of how you feel? Because I've been there. I have been there many times, and recently I will share over last week when I got married. I cried more this past weekend in front of other men, my groomsmen, family members, than I have in any other weekend in my life. I probably cried more than when I got whoopings when I was a kid.
Congratulations.
I appreciate it. Up until that point, I will say, again, dealing with ill parents and cancer and all these different things that are heavy. I mean, I broke down on my bachelor trip. And that was like the beginning of the emotions starting to resurface. Because again, for 5 years or so, I had just been like, I'm numb to it. I just got to deal with what I got to deal with. So I don't know if there's a more efficient way to get out of that numbness where you can feel. Because again, we talked about holding stuff in our bodies. When we're feeling all these things and we're holding it in, I mean, that's how diseases and all these other things, these ailments that we end up with chronically. Not acute, but chronically, like we spoke about. That's when those things pop up. And it's like, we can avoid that. So I want to hear if you've ever been in that season first, what was it like for you? And then how did you pull yourself out of it? And then I'll share mine at the end, and this will be the last question we'll wrap up. And we'll go to Q&A, and you guys, also, you can raise your hand at any point in time, and if speakers feel the need to, call on someone, we can do that. But this is the last panelist question from me, and then I'll share, and then we'll wrap. So how do you deal with that? Have you ever been in that season where you've been numb? How did you get through it and pull yourself back to, I'm okay to feel,
Yeah. What comes to mind first when you say that actually is how you talk about like how it can manifest as chronic disease. One thing I've always found that's been the most true is that across all of the boards, what I've seen, stress is the #1 root cause of almost all disease. And when you can eliminate stress, you can pretty much overcome anything. That's why if you look at throughout many different cultures, in the places and people you can interview, or if you look at blue zones, or even in places like India, they have these sages that they say can live like hundreds of years, but you all ask them that question, like, what is it that allows you to live the longest? They say just eliminating stress and not like thinking about, all your worries and finding ways to learn how to deal with that in a healthy way, and just finding that smooth balance. And also, I think fear as well has throughout history been the greatest motivator for society, which is unfortunate. I hope it didn't have to be that way, but historically that's always how it's been. So when you think about that, it tells you we have a lot to work on as a society, and especially knowing that stress and fear, like especially for teenagers, there's not really too many outlets to where we're given ways to learn how to deal with that. Outside of, you could go to a therapist, or you could go to, your pastor or your religion, but aside from relying on someone from the outside, like we're not taught things like meditation or breath work or, having a really good diet and routine. I mean, look at the rate of chronic disease in America. Like in the past 10 years, historically, it's gone up at least 5, if not 10x. and even since COVID,